there, night owl, or maybe you're just trying to wind down after a long, civilized day full of emails, gluten-free snacks, and climate-controlled comfort. Either way, welcome. Tonight, we're traveling back in time. Not to the shiny version of the Middle Ages. No castles and candlelit banquets here. No, we're talking about real medieval life. The sweaty, smelly, slightly fungal kind. So before you get too cozy under your blanket that doesn't have lice in it, like the video and subscribe if you enjoy these sleepy strolls through strange history. And hey, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. It's oddly soothing to imagine someone drifting off in Michigan while another is cooking breakfast in Melbourne. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And imagine this. You, a modern human with dental care and a working knowledge of plumbing, suddenly wake up in the year 1325. No phone, no coffee, no idea what's going on. The real question is, how long would you last? Let's find out. But fair warning, you're not going to like the answer. Congratulations, you've survived your first medieval night. Barely. You wake up not to the gentle chime of your phone alarm, but to a distant church bell ringing like it's personally mad at you. Your bed? Not so much a bed as it is a sad, collapsing sack stuffed with straw, lice, and possibly a turnip someone lost 3 weeks ago. You're sore in places you didn't know could be sore. That smell? It's you. And also your entire extended family. Because yes, you all sleep in the same room. One space. One pile of scratchy bedding. One goat that definitely just sneezed on your leg. Your pillow is a folded bit of linen, maybe. Or a log, probably both. You shift, and something crunches. You don't ask what it was. Sunlight filters in through a gap in the thatched roof. It's beautiful, in the way that mildew patterns on your ceiling are beautiful when you're desperate for a distraction. Your feet hit the dirt floor, which is, in fact, a literal dirt floor. It's either soggy from last night's rain or crusted over with something suspiciously sticky. The good news, you're not dead. The bad news, it's only 5 a.m. Your joints feel like ancient hinges, and the village rooster sounds like it's auditioning for medieval death metal. And no, there's no snooze button, just chores, always chores. Welcome to Morning in the Middle Ages. You're already losing. Let's be clear from the start. The concept of a bathroom as you know it does not exist. There is no toilet, no flushing, no softly scented candle flickering by the sink. What you do have is a wooden bucket, a patch of grass, or, if you're feeling fancy, an open window and some very bad manners. Let's walk through your options. Option 1. The peasant special. This involves a bucket placed behind your hut, modestly shielded by a few boards or a half-hearted fence made from old sticks and shame. The bucket is shared by your entire household. Yes, including your great-aunt who ate something questionable yesterday. It's already full. The contents are sloshing. You do what you have to do, and then you toss the result out the window, into the alley, wherever gravity leads. And you yell first. This is not a polite suggestion. It's law. The phrase is gardez-l'eau, or just garde-l'eau, if you're in a hurry. It means watch out for the water, but everyone knows it means brace for impact. Now imagine living in a city with thousands of people doing this every day. Streets quickly turn into open sewers. You slip, you slide, you pray, your boots don't have holes. Spoiler, they do. Option 2. Public latrines. Found in slightly more developed towns, these are large communal outhouses where you sit side by side with strangers in a long row of wooden holes. There are no partitions. No privacy. Someone next to you might be humming a tune. Someone else might be throwing up. The scent is best described as fermented despair. Ventilation? Unlikely. Toilet paper? Don't be ridiculous. You might use straw, moss, a handful of leaves, or, if you're truly luxurious, a rag. most people just do their best and move on. And don't even think about where your hands have been. No sinks, no soap, and no concept of personal hygiene. Just a vague hope that rain will eventually take care of it. Option 3. Castle living. You're thinking, surely this must be better. You're in a fancy stone fortress now, maybe even a tower. Wrong. Castles often featured something called a garderobe, a long vertical shaft built into the castle wall, with a hole at the top and a free fall into the moat below. Yes, the same moat that's supposed to protect the castle from invaders. Imagine that, swimming through human waste to siege a tower. We don't know what's worse, the smell, the splashback, or the risk of someone using the garderobe while you're halfway up the wall. In some castles, the garderobe emptied into cesspits, which occasionally overflowed. And when they did, well, let's just say you didn't want to be the unlucky soul tasked with cleaning it. But wait, someone has to clean it. Enter the gong farmer. This was an actual medieval job. These brave, unfortunate souls were hired to clean out the cesspits. The pay was surprisingly decent, because literally no one else wanted to do it. The smell stuck to them. For life. They weren't allowed in churches, or taverns, or even conversations. People crossed the street when they walked by, which was probably safer anyway, considering their boots had seen things. Toileting in medieval times wasn't just gross, it was a hazard. Disease thrived in the muck. Dysentery, typhoid, cholera. Every bathroom break came with a risk. Forget doom scrolling on your phone. In the 14th century, the only thing scrolling was your dignity, slowly circling a drainage ditch. Oh, and remember, you're not alone. Everyone in your household, and many of your neighbors, are using some version of the above. The smell? Constant. The flies? Everywhere. The idea of a clean bathroom would have sounded like witchcraft. So next time you find yourself annoyed that someone forgot to replace the toilet paper roll, just be glad the only thing falling from the window above you is judgment and not something else. So, you've survived the bathroom experience, which deserves a small celebration. Maybe a croissant? A strong coffee? Perhaps some scrambled eggs or at least a slice of toast? Nope. Welcome to medieval breakfast, where the only things scrambled are your expectations, and the closest thing to toast is a hunk of bread that doubles as a building material. Let's start with the main course, pottage. This isn't oatmeal. It's not soup. It's something. A thick, lukewarm slurry of grains, water, and mystery vegetables boiled down into a consistency somewhere between stew and regret. Whatever was left from dinner. That's in the pot. Whatever you found growing near the fence, also in the pot. The family dog looked at a beet funny. In it goes. Pottage is not a recipe, it's a process. A never-ending one. The same pot might bubble for days, even weeks, with new ingredients added as available. Meat? Maybe. If you're lucky, there's a scrap of salted pork floating somewhere near the bottom, like a mythical creature. More likely, it's just onions and turnips. Lots of turnips, boiled until even their will to live has evaporated. Next to your wooden bowl of edible sludge is a chunk of bread, and we use the word bread loosely. This isn't a soft baguette or artisanal sourdough. It's a rock-hard brick made of barley, rye, or whatever passed for flour that year, sometimes mixed with sawdust, clay, or acorn powder to stretch it out. This bread is so dense, so tough, it's less of a food and more of a medieval dental exam. You don't chew it. You soften it in your pottage and hope for the best. And yes, there's a decent chance it's moldy. Just scrape off the green parts, unless you like vivid hallucinations and dance plagues, in which case, bon appetit. Drinks? Don't get too excited. There's no orange juice, no tea, no soy lattes with foam hearts. You're drinking beer. At 6 in the morning. Not a pint of Guinness, mind you. This is small beer. A weak, watery ale with barely enough alcohol to make a toddler hiccup, but just enough to kill the bacteria in the water. Because the water, as we've established, wants you dead. Small beer is served to everyone, children included. Because no one's going to risk a sip of the well water, which is currently full of things that used to be alive and are now just floaty. So bottoms up. It's either beer or intestinal roulette. Still hungry? Maybe you've got a hunk of cheese left over from last week. It's hard, crumbly, and smells like something the dog buried and forgot. Perfect. Or perhaps a dried apple slice, if it hasn't been eaten by worms or confiscated by your landlord. Fruit is rare, seasonal, and shockingly expensive. What about meat? Haha. No meat is reserved for the wealthy, the clergy, or holiday feasts. You, as a humble peasant, may encounter meat a few times a year, usually during a festival, or if something on the farm dies suddenly but doesn't look too suspicious. And spices? Forget about it. A pinch of black pepper costs more than your monthly rent. A spoonful of cinnamon is practically sorcery. The average peasant flavors their food with salt, if they're lucky, or onions, garlic, and the occasional herb growing near the pig pen. After breakfast, you put your wooden spoon back in your belt, yes, really, lick your fingers clean, and brace yourself for a full day of labor. You're underfed, slightly buzzed, and your bread might have given you tetanus. Good morning, medieval style. You've choked down your pottage, washed it down with lukewarm beer, and now it's time to get dressed. Not for a party, not for a date, just for another day of surviving the 14th century with your dignity dangling by a very frayed thread. And speaking of threads, let's take a look at what you're wearing. The good news? You won't waste time deciding what to wear. The bad news? That's because you only own one outfit. Maybe two, if you're extravagantly lucky or suspiciously connected to a cloth merchant. For the average medieval peasant, the wardrobe consisted of a single tunic made of coarse wool or linen. It's brown. Everything is brown, or grayish-brown, or dirt-colored. Fashion options are limited when your fabric is dyed with things like mud, bark, and despair. Your tunic reaches your knees, or maybe your shins, and smells like it's been passed down through 6 generations and washed approximately 0 times. Underwear? Optional. If you're lucky, you have a linen shift or undertunic, designed to absorb sweat, lice, and moral ambiguity. If you're not lucky, well, let's just say you're one layer closer to nature, and not in a charming forest bathing kind of way. Belts are essential. Not for style, but for practicality. You hang your eating spoon on it, maybe a knife, possibly a pouch filled with exactly 1 sad coin, and a pebble you thought looked like a frog. Shoes? Don't get your hopes up. Most peasants go barefoot, even in winter, because shoes are expensive and fall apart faster than your dreams of upward mobility. If you do have shoes, they're made from untreated leather, stitched roughly into shape with twine and prayer. They leak, they rub, they do not support anything, least of all your arches. And socks? Those are for the rich. You wrap rags around your feet and pretend it's fine. Now let's talk laundry. As in, it's not happening. Not unless the moon is full, the river hasn't frozen over, and you've somehow bribed a local washerwoman with a goose and a heartfelt poem. Washing clothes means hauling water, boiling it over a fire, scrubbing with soap made from ashes and animal fat, and drying everything in the breeze, which smells like latrine most days. So what do you do instead? You air things out, shake them, scrape off the worst of the grime, and carry on. Dirt isn't a stain, it's a texture. And yes, everyone smells. You, your family, your neighbors, the priest, the local sheep, everyone. Body odor was so common, it became part of people's identity. If you ever met someone who didn't reek of sweat and livestock, you'd assume they were a witch. Or worse, French. But wait, there's more. If you're female, add in a head covering. Modesty was everything. A wimple, veil, or linen coif kept your hair hidden and your social reputation intact. Let your hair down in public, and you'd better be married, drunk, or about to start a folk rebellion. If you're noble, things are better, slightly. You have access to finer fabrics like silk or velvet, but they're reserved for showing off, not comfort. You still wear layers upon layers, including hose, tight woolen leggings, a doublet, a surcoat, and possibly a cloak that screams, "I have taxes." You don't. But even rich people couldn't escape lice. In fact, the nobility just had fancier lice. And here's the kicker. Clothing wasn't just personal property. It was inherited. If your uncle died, you might inherit his house, or just his tunic. The fabric didn't rot as fast as your family did. In short, getting dressed in the Middle Ages wasn't about expression. It was about survival. You put on your stiff, stained tunic, strap on your spoon belt, squish into your leaky leather shoes, and trudge outside, knowing full well you'll come home in the same outfit, only somehow itchier. But hey, at least you didn't wear your good tunic today. That one's for weddings, funerals, and being burned as a heretic. Let's be honest, you don't have a job. Not in the modern sense. There's no office, no salary, no benefits package, and certainly no annual performance review. Unless you count not dying as your KPI. You're a peasant, and your job is simple. Work until your body gives out. The good news? There's always something to do. The bad news? There's always something to do. Your day begins the moment the sun creeps over the horizon. If you're lucky, you've had a bowl of pottage and a sip of small beer. If not, you're working on an empty stomach that sounds like a dying bagpipe. Your first task? Survive the commute, which is roughly 10 paces from your hut to the field, and still somehow unpleasant. The ground is wet, the air is cold, and you stepped in something. Again, the land you're working, not yours. It belongs to the local lord, a man you've maybe seen once from a distance, cloaked in velvet, surrounded by hounds, and smelling like expensive soap and systemic oppression. You till his land. You plant his seeds. You harvest his crops. And in return, you get to keep a small fraction of the yield, provided you've paid your rent, your taxes, your church tithes, and possibly a goat bribe to the local reeve. Your tools? Laughable. A wooden hoe, a dull sickle, and something vaguely sharp that might once have been a shovel. No machines, no safety gear. Just your bare hands, your aching back, and a body full of splinters. Women's work isn't any easier. If you're female, you work in the fields and manage the home. You grind grain, churn butter, feed the chickens, stir the pottage, and try to keep the children from licking frogs. You spin wool, sew torn clothes, mend your husband's only pair of socks, and dig through your scalp for lice. All before lunch. Children, no school, no cartoons. Just small, unpaid co-workers in itchy tunics. By age 5, they're helping in the fields, scaring crows, hauling water, and asking questions like, "Why does the sky smell like manure?" But let's say you're not a farmer. Let's say you've got a trade. A blacksmith? Great. You work in a dark, hot shed pounding iron all day while breathing in smoke and molten splinters. A tanner? Enjoy boiling cow skins and urine. A baker? Hope you don't burn your hands or get fined for selling undersized loaves. Every job comes with its own unique mix of risk, misery, and chronic pain. And did we mention the hours? Sunrise to sunset. No weekends, no paid holidays. Sunday is technically your day off, unless it's harvest season or the Lord wants something done or your ox decides today is the day it just gives up on life. Speaking of animals, let's talk about them. You depend on them, but they're also a threat. A kick from a horse, a bite from a pig, or a particularly rebellious goat can end your week, if not your existence. And if your livestock dies, your income dies with it. Try explaining that to the tax collector. And then there's injury. You twist your ankle in a ditch, keep going. You slice your hand open, wrap it in a rag, and pray. You develop back pain? Congratulations. You're now an elder at the age of 26. If you get sick, tough luck. There's no sick leave, no doctor. Just your village healer, offering a poultice made of moss, old bread, and whispered Latin. At the end of the day, you're filthy, soaked in sweat, and covered in something that might be dirt or might not. Your hands are blistered, your feet are bleeding. Your spine is shaped like a question mark, and you still have to walk home, feed your family, and fall asleep next to that same snoring goat. The job isn't just exhausting. It's inescapable. You were born into it, you'll die in it. And your children will inherit your patch of land, your broken tools, and your chronic neck pain. But hey, at least no one's invented spreadsheets yet. It's noon, or close enough. You don't have a watch. Your stomach, however, has been counting every minute since sunrise. You've already plowed, lifted, stirred, milked, shouted at a chicken, and fought off an angry goose. It's time to eat, or at least pretend. Welcome to medieval lunch. That magical moment where you get to stop working just long enough to realize how hungry you are. What's on the menu? Surprise! It's pottage. Again, you dip into the same bottomless cauldron of grain and turnip stew you had for breakfast. It's slightly warmer now thanks to sitting by the hearth, and slightly crunchier thanks to whatever fell into it while you were gone. Is that a pebble? A beetle? Doesn't matter. Chew fast. Ask no questions. If you're lucky, there's some leftover bread to go with it. Hard enough to chip a tooth, but filling enough to keep you from fainting. You might gnaw on a chunk of cheese that's well past its prime, or nibble on pickled cabbage with the faint flavor of last winter's sadness. Meat. Only if something died. If the pig gave up the ghost or a neighbor's chicken met an unfortunate end, there might be a small celebratory stew. But more often, it's roots and barley, and the occasional unintentional protein source, like bugs. And the worst part? You're not full, not even close. That's because you're probably undernourished. Most peasants consumed between 1,500 to 2,000 calories per day. Barely enough to fuel a medieval lifestyle that burns calories like a furnace trying to heat a stone monastery. You're lifting, walking, hauling, digging, and running on barley and boiled weeds. So you develop that lovely medieval condition known as chronic hunger. It doesn't kill you outright. It just makes everything harder. You're slower, colder. Your wounds heal like molasses. You get dizzy. You forget things. And every now and then, you catch yourself staring at your neighbor's goat with ideas. Meanwhile, in the castle down the road, the local noble is enjoying roast goose, candied almonds, and honey cakes served on pewter platters. But he's also got gout, constipation, and halitosis, so bad it has political implications. You win some, you lose some. But wait, it gets worse. Because right now, your village is probably going through a lean season. This is the time of year, usually late winter, when last year's harvest is running low and next season's crops haven't come in yet. Your food stores, almost empty. Your grain, full of weevils. Your options, limited to creative despair. Sometimes, people eat tree bark, or shoe leather, or dig up roots they can't identify and hope for the best. You'll hear stories of people boiling grass. That's not a metaphor. They literally boiled grass. And remember, famine is always around the corner. A bad harvest, a late frost, or an invading army can wipe out your food supply. Suddenly, your biggest concern isn't the taste. It's whether anything will be on your plate tomorrow. And you know what happens when people starve long enough? Their immune systems crumble. So let's add that to the list. Because here's what else is on the menu today. Disease. Your lunch break takes place in an environment swarming with bacteria, flies, and unwashed hands. You ate without soap. You drank water from a wooden bucket shared by your livestock. The same bucket someone probably bathed in last week. You cough. You sniffle. You scratch something that feels suspicious. Is it fleas? Is it scabies? You'll find out later. Maybe. Or maybe you'll die before it becomes relevant. Because a simple stomach bug in the Middle Ages isn't just an inconvenience. It's a threat. You get diarrhea. And without clean water or medicine, dehydration sets in fast. People died from spoiled food, bad cheese, or drinking from the wrong puddle. There's no refrigeration. No expiration dates. If your stew smells weird, you eat it anyway. What else are you going to do? Not eat? Eventually, you push your bowl away, still hungry, slightly queasy, and definitely confused about whether you're full or just numb. You stand up, brush the crumbs off your tunic, which honestly improves its appearance, and head back to the field. Lunch is over. So is the best part of your day. And you still have 6 hours of labor, a headache, and a suspiciously swollen toe waiting for you. Bon appetit. So, something's wrong. Maybe it's that cough that hasn't gone away. Maybe it's the oozing sore on your leg that looks suspiciously like it's growing teeth. Or maybe it's just the bone-deep exhaustion that won't shake. No matter how much pottage you eat or prayer you mumble, in modern life you'd go see a doctor. Maybe take some antibiotics. At worst, you'd lie in bed with a heating pad, Googling your symptoms until you convince yourself it's scurvy. But here in the Middle Ages, medicine is less about healing and more about surviving the cure. Let's start with your local healer. She might be a village-wise woman, a monk with a dusty herb book, or a traveling doctor who smells like feet and ambition. Credentials? None. Education? Varies between. Read a scroll once, and the spirits told me. You're putting your life in their hands because, well, it's that, or die. Your symptoms are carefully observed. You're pale? That's too much phlegm. You're angry and gassy? Excess bile. You've got a headache, stomachache, sore throat, and nightmares about weasels? Definitely unbalanced humors. Because yes, the entire medical system is built around the 4 humors: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. Balance them, and you're healthy. Throw them off, and you're basically a rotting fruit with opinions. Treatment number 1, bloodletting. You're too hot, too angry, too anything. Obviously, you have too much blood. So out it comes. A vein in your arm or neck is opened with a dull blade, or leeches are applied to your temples, feet, and wherever else someone thought might be funny. Bloodletting is a very popular treatment. For fevers, for headaches, for broken legs, for loneliness. Honestly, if you sneezed weird, someone might suggest it. Treatment number 2, poultices and potions. A paste of mashed onions, moldy bread, goose fat, and rabbit dung is applied to your wound. The idea is to draw out the infection. In reality, it attracts flies and possibly spiritual trauma. If you're lucky, the healer adds herbs, sage for purification, wormwood for digestive issues, poppy for pain, or pleasant hallucinations. If you're unlucky, they prescribe something like crushed beetles, powdered bones, or, no joke, human urine. Some treatments are so foul they cure nothing but your appetite. Treatment number 3, prayers and pilgrimages. Maybe your sickness isn't physical at all. Maybe it's divine punishment. Have you confessed your sins? Have you paid your church dues? Have you looked too long at the miller's wife? If you're very sick, someone might send you on a pilgrimage. Yes. While actively diseased, you're told to walk hundreds of miles to a holy shrine in the hope that a miracle cures your boils. Spoiler, the miracle rarely arrives, but gangrene might. Surgery? Oh dear, surgery exists, but anesthesia does not. A barber surgeon might amputate a limb with a rusty saw, while 2 friends hold you down and scream encouragement. The wound is then cauterized with a red-hot iron, which is either to stop the bleeding or cleanse your soul through extreme fire. The survival rate? Let's just say high fives were not common afterward. Dentistry? Hilariously worse. Your toothaches? Too bad, there's no toothpaste, no floss, no Novocaine. The barber yanks it out with iron pliers while someone shoves a rag in your mouth and reminds you not to bite the priest. There are no antibiotics, no sterile instruments, no wait-and-see approach. Everything is urgent, everything is painful, everything is slightly covered in goose grease. And yet, somehow, you're still alive. For now, your recovery process involves lying on a straw mattress, sweating through your only tunic, and waiting to either heal or expire. Neighbors visit to poke you with sticks and offer opinions. A priest comes by to check your soul for early signs of damnation. Your children quietly argue about who gets your shoes. And here's the kicker. If you do recover, no one thanks the healer. It was divine mercy. If you don't recover, clearly you sinned. Either way, medicine gets off scot-free. So next time you pop an ibuprofen or complain about waiting 10 minutes at urgent care, remember, it used to be leeches, blood bowls, and garlic basil foot ointment for literally everything. And you still had to get up and feed the chickens afterward. Congratulations, you've made it to nightfall without dying, passing out, or confessing to a crime you didn't commit just to get a nap in the stocks. The sun has gone down, the tools are put away, and the fields are quiet. Surely now, finally, blessed sleep awaits. Not quite. Because sleep in the Middle Ages isn't the dreamy, lavender-scented escape you might imagine. It's more like an obstacle course of lice, livestock, theology, and mild terror. Let's start with your bed. If you're a peasant, there's no mattress. There's a straw-filled sack, if you're lucky, or just a pile of flattened hay on the dirt floor. It's damp. It's itchy. It might be crawling. You fluff it the only way you know how, by kicking it and whispering a prayer that nothing hatches tonight. Bedding? One wool blanket. It smells like goat, mostly because the goat slept on it last week. You wrap it around your shoulders, tuck your feet under your cousin's elbow, and try not to notice the draft whistling through the thatched roof. You're not alone in this bed, or even in this room. Sleeping alone is a luxury reserved for nobles and hermits. In your world, you sleep with your entire family. Parents, children, cousins, possibly a neighbor passing through, and always a chicken that refuses to sleep anywhere but your legs. And the animals? Oh, they're here too. Pigs snore softly near the hearth. A dog curls up at your feet. A cat perches on your chest like a slightly judgmental night demon. It's not affection, it's body heat. Everyone is just trying not to freeze. You lie there, itchy, cramped, and stiff, waiting for your first sleep to begin. Yes, first sleep. In the medieval world, people didn't sleep in one long stretch. Segmented sleep was the norm. You'd fall asleep shortly after sunset, sleep for a few hours, wake up around midnight, stay awake for an hour or two, and then drift into second sleep until dawn. What do you do during that middle-of-the-night break? Some people pray, some check the fire, some get intimate. Medieval doctors claimed this was the, quote, ideal time for marital relations, because nothing says romance like shared lice and cold toes. Others just stare into the dark and hope the ceiling doesn't fall in. And speaking of darkness, you're surrounded by it. There are no streetlights, no glowing phones. If you've got a candle, you ration it. If not, you lie there in pitch black, listening to every creak and sniffle and distant howling dog with growing dread. You hear scratching. Is it rats? Probably. Fleas? Definitely. A banshee? Could be. In medieval times, dreams were taken seriously, as messages from saints, warnings from demons, or signs that you'd eaten too much boiled cabbage. You might dream of falling, of fire, of being chased by something vaguely symbolic. You might dream of dying, which is extra concerning because, well, people do die in their sleep often. Hence, the bedtime prayers. Before you sleep, you say something like, "If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take, which is less of a lullaby and more of a legal statement of spiritual custody. You cover all your bases in case you don't wake up. Confess sins. Say a psalm. Ask Saint Apollonia to protect your teeth. Then, finally, you drift off. Sort of. The blanket is scratchy. Your back hurts. Someone's foot is in your rib cage. The chicken is clucking in its sleep. The pig lets out a noise that makes everyone uncomfortable. You itch. You cough. You consider your life choices. And then the bell rings. It's matins, the midnight prayer service, if you live near a monastery. Bells echo through the village, waking the devout and the easily startled. You groan, roll over, and try to reclaim some warmth before your body forgets what sleep is. Eventually, second sleep creeps in. It's deeper, heavier, more dream-filled. And before you know it, the rooster crows. You survived the night. Just barely. Now it's time to do it all again. You've made it through the night. Frozen, itchy, and mildly crushed under the collective weight of your extended family and their farm animals. But before you even think about starting your daily chores again, you have something much more urgent to consider. Are you going to hell? Because in medieval Europe, that's not a rhetorical question. It's a very real concern, one that haunts your waking hours, your sleep, and probably your dreams about flying goats. Faith isn't just a personal belief system. It's the entire operating system of society. The church doesn't just influence your spiritual life. It's your government, your calendar, your educational system, your doctor's office, your therapist, and your local theater. It owns land, collects taxes, prosecutes crimes, and occasionally burns people alive. In short, it's everywhere, and you can't opt out. Your village has a church. Everyone's village has a church. And that church bell rings all day, calling you to prayer, whether you're in the mood or not. Morning prayer, midday prayer, evening prayer, special prayers for saints, days, extra prayers if someone coughs ominously. There's a prayer for childbirth, rain, plague prevention, good crops, bad dreams, and suspicious chickens. And then there are sins. Sins aren't just obvious things like murder or stealing. In the Middle Ages, sin is lurking around every corner. Talking back to your parents? Sin. Sleeping through matins? Sin. Thinking about that one merchant's daughter a little too long? Oh, sin. Coveting your neighbor's cow? Sin, and possibly bad taste. What happens if you sin? You go to hell. Unless you confess. But even then, there's a decent chance you'll still end up in purgatory. A kind of spiritual waiting room full of fire, regret, and divine paperwork. It's like a DMV for souls, but with more screaming. Want to shorten your purgatory stay? Better start collecting indulgences. These are spiritual, get-out-of-purgatory faster cards you can earn through good works, donations, or going on pilgrimages. Can't afford a pilgrimage? That's fine. Just donate a chicken to the church, or a barrel of cider, or the entire contents of your garden. Yes, even your vegetables can buy you grace. The church also keeps track of the liturgical calendar, which dictates your life. There are feast days, fast days, saints' days, holy days, and more fasting days. You don't get to decide when to eat meat. The calendar does. It tells you when to celebrate, when to mourn, and when to quietly starve in a spiritually enriching way. Oh, and speaking of fasting, you're supposed to give up meat for nearly half the year. But remember, you don't have meat to begin with. So you end up fasting from something you already weren't eating. It's like spiritually renouncing luxury yachts while living in a barrel. Mass attendance? Mandatory. Even if you're sick. Even if it's snowing. Even if your shoes have dissolved into mud-colored soup. You go, you kneel. You listen to Latin you don't understand. You pretend not to doze off. And then you get back to work. Don't want to attend? That's suspicious. Are you a heretic? Because that's the real fear. Not just sinning, but believing the wrong thing. Heresy is not a fun philosophical disagreement. It's a legal charge. And depending on who's in charge, it might get you excommunicated, imprisoned, tortured, or executed. Sometimes all four. You don't read the Bible because it's in Latin, and you're not allowed to own one anyway. You rely on the priest to tell you what's what. And if he says wearing shoes on a Tuesday is sinful, well, guess who's barefoot now? Fear isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature. Fear keeps people obedient. Fear keeps people donating. Fear keeps the candles lit, the confession lines long, and the church coffers full. But it's not all fire and brimstone. There's also comfort. People need faith because life is hard. Death is closer than your breakfast, and hope is sometimes the only thing between you and complete despair. You light a candle for your sick child. You pray for your brother who died last winter. You carve a little cross into your wooden spoon because you heard it protects against stomach worms. And sometimes it helps, or at least it feels like it does. And that's enough, because in a world where almost everything is out of your control, weather, war, illness, hunger, faith is the one thing you can carry with you. Into the fields, into the darkness, into bed with the pig and the chicken, and maybe, just maybe, into a slightly less fiery afterlife. After all the dirt, toil, and sin, surely it's time for a good soak in the tub, right? A nice warm bath, some fragrant herbs, maybe a candle or two? Nope. Because in the Middle Ages, staying clean was a radical act, one that hovered somewhere between impractical and borderline suspicious. Let's get this out of the way. People did bathe in medieval times. Not every day, not every week, but the whole everyone stank constantly myth, slightly exaggerated, though not by much. The real issue was that hygiene was complicated, water was risky, and soap had trust issues. If you're a peasant, your bath is usually a cold splash in the river, assuming the river isn't frozen, flooded, or filled with livestock upstream doing unspeakable things. You strip down behind a bush, shiver dramatically, dunk yourself, scrub with sand or old cloth, and hope no one walks by and sees your noble parts. Tubs do exist. Large wooden barrels or basins, but they're mostly for the rich, or used communally at bathhouses. If you own one, you fill it by carrying bucket after bucket from the well or fire-heated cauldron. A full bath might take hours to prepare, so when it happens, it's an event. Which leads us to communal bathhouses. Yes, they were real. In medieval towns, bathhouses were surprisingly common. Men and women sometimes bathed together, scandalous. And the atmosphere was part cleansing, part social hour, part vaguely risque dinner theater. You'd rent a private tub or share a steamy room, get scrubbed down by an attendant with coarse cloth and ash soap, maybe sip wine, chat about the harvest, and try not to get lice from the towels. Some bathhouses even offered meals, and in some cases, less family-friendly services, which is why bathhouses eventually fell out of favor with the church. Because according to some sermons, bathing was suspicious. Too much cleanliness smacked of vanity, or lust, or both. Clean skin was seductive skin. So while peasants were discouraged from overwashing, nobles had to be subtle about it. No, I didn't bathe for pleasure. I was just washing off the devil. And then came the plagues. Once disease outbreaks, especially the Black Death, started ravaging Europe, people got nervous. Doctors noticed that people who bathed regularly sometimes got sicker. The reasoning: opening your pores made you vulnerable to bad air or miasma. The solution? Stop bathing. Suddenly, being too clean was dangerous. Soap became suspect. Steam baths were frowned upon. People layered on more clothes to seal in their bodily odors, believing it would block disease from getting in. Spoiler, it didn't. So what did people do instead? Dry washing. You'd wipe your face and hands with a cloth. Maybe change your shirt once a month. Sprinkle yourself with rose water if you are wealthy. Scented sachets were popular. Little pouches of herbs and flowers tucked into your sleeves, hat, or, in extreme cases, your nose. Your teeth? If you cleaned them at all, it was with chewed twigs, crushed mint, or abrasive powders made from ashes and chalk. Toothbrushes existed, but rarely. Toothpaste was experimental. Dentists, as we've discussed, were terrifying. Hair care? You combed it. Sometimes with lice combs, which were exactly what they sound like. Some folks shaved their heads completely and wore wigs, not for fashion, but for pest control. And then there was soap. Soap was handmade from animal fat and lye. It worked. It also stripped your skin like a medieval chemical peel and left you smelling like boiled sheep. Nice glow, someone might say, but you smell like a sacrificial altar. Still, when all the stars aligned, weather, water, and courage, you'd have a bath day. A real one. You'd soak, scrub, let your skin wrinkle until it remembered being young. You'd lie back in warm water and forget, just for a moment, that you live in a world where rats outnumber people. And then someone would knock on the door and remind you that you were due in the fields half an hour ago. Ah, well, at least your ankles are clean. Fear in the Middle Ages isn't just a passing feeling. It's a lifestyle. Everyone is afraid. Constantly. Of things that make sense, like war, starvation, wolves, and things that absolutely do not, like angry saints, moonlight, and sneezing incorrectly. Let's start with the obvious. The church wants you to be afraid. Not out of malice. Well, not always, but because fear keeps order. If you believe that the wrong word, the wrong outfit, or the wrong thought could send you into a 1,000-year inferno, you tend to keep your opinions and your tunic tightly cinched. Hell is terrifying, but purgatory, even worse. It's long, it's boring, it's fire, but also bureaucracy. You want to skip that line if you can. But eternal damnation is just one thing on your growing list of anxieties. Let's look at what else is rattling around in your 14th century brain. War. Even if you're not a soldier, and let's face it, most peasants aren't, war is a very local problem. Armies don't avoid villages. They march right through them. They burn crops, steal livestock, recruit your sons. Sometimes they use your hut as a toilet. It's never great. Also, borders change all the time. One day, you're French. The next, English. Then back to French. You don't move. The war does. Plague. You already survived one round of plague. Well done. But it might come back. The Black Death didn't just hit once in the 1300s and leave. It came back. Over and over. Like a really bad sequel series. You don't know how disease works. You blame miasmas, bad luck, sin, foreigners, or cats. Which is ironic because killing cats only made the rat problem worse. You wear herbs in your clothes. You say prayers. You avoid anyone who sneezes. Spoiler, it still finds you. Wolves and witches' wolves are a real threat. They steal sheep, sometimes children. They're fast, clever, and travel in packs. And unlike bandits, they don't run away when you scream and wave a stick. Witches, less real but deeply feared. Your crops failed. Witch. Your baby got sick? Witch. Your goat looks at you funny? Absolutely a witch. Women who live alone, own a cat, or enjoy reading herbs are constantly one bad winter away from being set on fire for knowing too much about garlic. The night darkness is terrifying. There are no streetlights, no night vision goggles. Once the sun sets, the world becomes a pitch-black soup of noises and shapes that may or may not be real. Every creak is a ghost. Every hoot is a demon. Every step in the wrong direction is potentially your last. Candles help, but they're expensive. So you whisper a prayer, clutch a wooden charm, and hope the night passes without a visit from the wild hunt. a ghostly cavalcade of warriors that might sweep you into the afterlife for sneezing at the wrong moon phase. Supernatural agriculture. You're afraid of your crops, not in a horror movie way, more like in a deeply anxious, please don't die on me way. One bad harvest? Starvation. Two bad harvests? Famine. You check your barley like a stockbroker checks the market. If your field isn't yielding, maybe someone cursed it. Maybe a fairy danced in it. Maybe you didn't leave the right offering last full moon. Better sprinkle holy water and apologize to the corn. Fire. Everything is flammable. Your house is wood. Your roof is straw. Your clothes are wool. Your heating source, an open flame. Your lighting, more flame. Your neighbor's 5-year-old playing with torches? Flame! House fires spread fast and destroy everything, and then what? You rebuild your entire life with no insurance, no support system, and one half-melted spoon. Your own thoughts. Not kidding. People fear dreams, visions, and feelings. If you hear voices, that could be divine or very demonic. If you feel rage, lust, or sadness, you worry your soul is slipping. A headache? Could be punishment. A good mood? Suspicious. Medieval life is one long psychological tightrope walk across guilt, hope, and practical survival. But here's the twist. You're also resilient. You sing. You joke. You find meaning in tiny moments, like a perfect egg, or a warm fire, or a clear sky. You laugh at fart jokes, which are still funny apparently. You share what little you have. You believe in saints and miracles and seasonal cider. You fear 100 things, but you live anyway, day after muddy, miraculous day. Despite everything, the labor, the lice, the looming threat of excommunication, medieval people somehow found time to have fun, real fun. The kind that makes you laugh, clap, and sometimes question every decision leading up to the moment a pig races through a crowd dressed as a bishop. Because entertainment in the Middle Ages, it's chaotic, deeply creative, occasionally violent, and always local. Let's start with the basics. Music. If you have a lute, you're basically a rock star. If you can sing, even better, because there's no Spotify and your only playlist is what your cousin hums while stirring pottage. Songs are passed down by ear, often bawdy, occasionally holy, and always catchy. You might hear a ballad about a saint, or a drinking song about a goat, or a tale of love involving way too many metaphors about turnips. Instruments include flutes, drums, bagpipes, hurdy-gurdies. Yes, that's a real thing. And anything you can hit, blow, or pluck that doesn't belong to the village priest. Dancing? Absolutely. But not like prom night. These are group dances. Stomping, clapping, circling, hopping. Think of it like a medieval Zumba class with more wool and less rhythm. At weddings, festivals, or harvest feasts, everyone joins in. Even the sheep look vaguely entertained. Then there's storytelling. A vital pastime when your options are listen to grandfather's ghost stories or stare into the fire until the pig blinks first. People love tales of heroes, saints, monsters, local scandals, and the neighbor who swears he saw a dragon that one time behind the barley field. Storytellers, or troubadours, travel from town to town with riddles, jokes, poems, and news from the next village over, which may or may not be true. They're walking entertainment systems, powered entirely by applause and questionable meals. Now, if you want something a little more interactive, there are games. Children play with carved dolls, bones, hoops, and wooden swords. Adults play dice, cards if you're fancy, or something resembling chess, but with rules that change depending on how recently someone lost at it. You might also enjoy wrestling, stick fighting, or mob football, which is not football as you know it, but rather a chaotic street brawl with a ball involved somewhere. Whole villages take part. There are no teams, no rules, no safety gear. The goal is to get the ball to a designated location, possibly miles away, possibly while also dodging chickens, carts, and aggressive ants. Feeling theatrical? You're in luck. Medieval towns often host mystery plays, dramatic performances of Bible stories staged in wagons or town squares. The actors? Usually locals. The special effects? Involving smoke, pulleys, and a surprising amount of pig's blood. One day you're a baker. The next you're playing Judas while your neighbor catapults fake fire at your feet. It's community theater, 14th century style. Festivals are where things get really wild. Every village has its saints, days, harvest fairs, and feast of fools, where the rules flip. The priest dresses like a clown, the peasants pretend to be kings, and someone inevitably rides a donkey into the church. It's rowdy, irreverent, and frowned upon by every bishop with a quill. There's juggling, bear baiting, don't ask, mummers, plays, jugglers, acrobats, and a guy who swears he can burp the name of the Pope. Someone gets drunk. Someone falls into a haystack. Someone wakes up with a chicken in their hood. And everyone, for a moment, forgets how hard life is. Because that's what entertainment does in the Middle Ages. It's not just about fun. It's about survival, emotional survival. You laugh, sing, dance, and cheer, not because life is easy, but because it isn't. These brief moments of joy are precious, messy, and completely irreplaceable. So next time you go to a concert or binge a show on a warm couch, take a moment to thank the peasants who paved the way by juggling turnips while being chased by a pig wearing a crown. For all its hardship, fear, and famine, the Middle Ages also had a deeply creative relationship with reality. People believed things that today sound absurd, but back then they made perfect, reasonable, of course I'll rub that on my leg kind of sense. Let's begin with your body. You probably believe it's filled with the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Keep them in balance, and you're healthy. If not, your personality, digestion, dreams, and marriage prospects are all at risk. Feeling sluggish? Must be too much phlegm. Angry for no reason? Yellow bile. Melancholy? Definitely black bile. Cheerful and slightly annoying? You're full of blood. People even chose careers based on their humors, because nothing says qualified surgeon like a naturally phlegmatic temperament. Now, how about some medical beliefs? Your best protection against the plague? A bouquet of herbs tied to your face, or maybe a wax amulet filled with Latin words and powdered frog. Leprosy? Treat it by sitting in a hot bath of mashed apples and wine. Toothache? Rub a dead mouse on your gums. That one's real. Don't worry, your barber surgeon will confirm all this. He just finished trimming someone's beard and is now preparing to trip on a skull, with the same tools. And then there's astrology, not for fun, for health care. Before any big medical treatment, a healer might consult the stars. Surgery on your left foot while Saturn is in Capricorn? Absolutely not. You want a blessed alignment, ideally with Jupiter smiling on your spleen. Pregnancies were timed, marriages planned, and crops planted based on planetary movement. The moon affected not just tides, but your bowels. Mercury retrograde wasn't about bad emails. It was about whether you'd survive childbirth. Let's not forget animals with reputations. You've probably heard of unicorns. But did you know weasels were sacred to the Virgin Mary? Or that basilisks could kill with a glance, and the only way to defeat one was to show it its own reflection? Roosters were sometimes believed to lay eggs that hatched serpents, and beavers were thought to bite off their own testicles to escape hunters. Why testicles, you ask? Because their castoreum glands were prized in medicine and, presumably, nightmares. There's also a strong belief in sympathetic magic, the idea that things affect other things if they resemble each other. Have a wart? Rub it with a bean and bury the bean under a full moon. Need protection? Carry a wolf tooth in your boot. Need to cure a fever? Tie a live chicken to your foot. Yes, a chicken. A living, very confused chicken. Some beliefs were stranger still. Medieval people genuinely believed in werewolves, sea monks, and dog-headed men. Travelers. Tales described people with faces in their chests, or feet so big they could be used as umbrellas. These were not jokes. These were geographical facts, according to the best minds available. And don't even get us started on alchemy. This wasn't just turning lead into gold. It was an entire philosophy of the universe. You could purify your soul by purifying metals. Your body was a crucible. Your spirit had phases. Mercury was basically a holy sacrament, and somewhere, someone was definitely hoarding bats' wings and lion spit in pursuit of eternal life. Why did people believe all this? Because the line between science, magic, and faith was thin and often beautifully blurred. There were no microscopes, no germ theory, no Google, but there was imagination, and trial and error, and blind, hopeful creativity. And weirdly, some of it worked. Not the chicken foot fever cure, maybe, but herbal medicine, breathing exercises, and even astrology did help people feel more connected to their bodies and the world. Sure, it's not what we'd call evidence-based medicine, but if you'd lived through 3 plagues, 5 famines, and a goat-related kitchen fire, you'd try anything too. In the Middle Ages, if you made it past childhood, past plague, famine, and questionable dentistry, congratulations, you're officially old, which, in most cases, means you're about 35. Let's get this straight. People didn't drop dead at 30 en masse. It's just that the average life expectancy was low, because infant mortality was astronomical. If you reached adulthood, you had a decent chance of seeing your 50s, even your 60s, though likely with no teeth, a hunched back, and a persistent limp. Aging wasn't glamorous. There were no retirement plans, no cruises, no crossword puzzles by the fire. You didn't spend your golden years sipping cider. You spent them trying to stay warm, remember your grandchildren's names, and not sneeze too hard for fear of pulling something. But there was respect. Elders were valuable, especially if you had all your fingers, a good memory, or great ghost stories. You might be asked for advice. You might pass down the family rake. You might be the only one who remembers what happened during the Great Goose Incident of 42. Still, your body is slowing down. Your joints ache. Your vision fades. You make more noises sitting down than you do speaking. Medicine, as we've discussed, is not exactly advanced, so you rely on garlic, ale, and pure stubbornness to keep going. And eventually, inevitably, it happens. Someone dies. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone else. Death is always nearby. A cough that doesn't go away. A cut that turns black. A winter that lasts too long. People die from things we'd fix with a lunch break and a trip to the pharmacy. But here's the thing. Death isn't feared the way you might think. It's familiar, expected, even structured. The church has a protocol, the Ars Moriendi, the art of dying. There are books, prayers, last rites, spiritual checklists. People are taught how to die well, with humility, repentance, and a final confession that hopefully gets you out of purgatory's long waiting room. When someone is dying, the village comes together. The priest is called. The family gathers. If you're lucky, you die surrounded by loved ones. If you're unlucky, a goat is chewing your tunic, and no one notices for 3 days. Funerals are both somber and social. There's a wake, usually in the home, where people pray, tell stories, and awkwardly pretend the body isn't slowly stiffening in the corner. Then there's a procession to the churchyard, sometimes with music, always with a lot of incense and speculation about the afterlife. You're buried in the church cemetery. No coffin unless you're wealthy. Just a shroud, a cross, and a very sincere hope that your name gets remembered in someone's prayers. Maybe a saint will vouch for you. Maybe you'll make it through purgatory in only a few decades. One can dream. And what happens after? Medieval belief in the afterlife is vivid. Heaven is golden, musical, and smells like incense and roses. Hell is hot, noisy, and crowded with popes who made the wrong enemies. Purgatory is slow, smoky, and full of theological debates. You might also stick around a bit. Ghosts are taken seriously. Not spooky sheet ghosts, but souls with unfinished business. You show up in dreams, knock over a candle, whisper something cryptic about the bucket. People leave food for you. Say masses. Tell stories. In this way, you live on. Not as a statue or a stained glass hero, but in the memory of the village, the tales passed down, the rake that still bears your initials. You're part of the communal past, part cautionary tale, part legend, part beloved curmudgeon, and one day, a wandering storyteller might mention you. The old one with the bad knees and the excellent insults. The one who outlived the plague, the pig, and 2 husbands. The one who could sleep through church bells but not a fart. The village has gone quiet. The fields rest under a blanket of mist. The last fire crackles low. Chickens murmur in their sleep. Somewhere, someone is humming a lullaby older than the stone church itself. And you, after surviving a full medieval day, are still here. A little scratched up. A bit hungry. Possibly bleeding from something you forgot to check. But alive. This life, for all its discomforts, is strangely beautiful. The rhythm of it. The closeness to land, to weather, to the turning of the seasons. It's a hard life. Exhausting. Unfair. Frequently muddy. But not without joy. You've witnessed love, laughter, terrible dancing, passionate storytelling, awkward dentistry, ghost-based decision-making, and the sacred art of making do with what you have. You've survived disease, bad bread, and boiling turnips. You've worried about your soul while tying a chicken to your foot. And through it all, you kept going. That's what people did. Not because they were stronger or better, but because they didn't have another choice. And in that persistence, in that day-after-day effort to live, to love, to laugh when they could, they built the world we now stand on. You're probably thinking, I'd never make it. And sure, you probably wouldn't want to. Not without antibiotics, dental floss, and a working toilet. But don't be too sure. Human beings are astonishingly good at adapting, at finding moments of peace, at turning fear into songs and suffering into jokes. If nothing else, medieval peasants were the original survivalists, emotionally, spiritually, and agriculturally. So next time your Wi-Fi drops out or your soup is too bland, take a moment to be grateful you're not being treated for gout, with a burning stick and a prayer to Saint Elmo. And if your bed feels lumpy tonight, just remember, at least you're not sharing it with a goat. Thanks for spending this long, peculiar journey in the past with me. May your sleep be untroubled, your dreams rat-free, and your humors perfectly balanced. Good night.